Hello. Welcome to another video with me. If you are new to my channel, my name is Melissa. I am an illustrator and graphic designer primarily, but I have a background in fashion design and just an immense love for astrology. As you come along this journey with me, you'll know that I like to combine all of those elements in together and make content out of it. So in today's video, we are going to be talking about astrological representation in the Kibbe body type soft dramatics. So soft dramatics are often referred to as a good mix of the dramatic, like pure dramatic, and the romantic Kibbe body type. Their most dominant traits is their long vertical, which can also be known as this feeling of being tall. So of course, if you are tall, you may be a dramatic, but it may not just be your logistical height, but if you just appear tall, you have that feeling and essence. And then with the undercurrent of yin, or a romantic undercurrent, you also have curve, whereas a pure dramatic, their most dominant traits are not curve. They're also going to be more angular, whereas a soft dramatic is going to have more softness around the shoulders and hips. Okay, so just a disclaimer, Kibbe is for all body types. End goal is to help us find our personal style. And it doesn't even have to be like the one big element. When it comes to finding your personal style, there's so many different tools. Kibbe is just one of them. And as you can see, I like to combine astrology. So combining these two offer a different perspective, showing that you don't always have to follow the certain guidelines that are so often recommended for our Kibbe body type. Okay, so first we have Aries. We have Ava Gardner. She is one of the old Hollywood representation for soft dramatics. She is known for having this elongation in her body. She has a long vertical. She also has angularity in her shoulders, but there is curve along her hips. I feel like her romantic undercurrent is very evident, and she is a good representation as a soft dramatic. As an Aries, so her Aries is in her midheaven. I've mentioned before that your midheaven represents your career path and your public image. So I feel like how that shows in her overall Hollywood career. She has this sensuality that is so often shown in her movies. She wears a lot of asymmetrical necklines, a lot of drapey fabrication. It could also be the time period that she is in. A lot of people have called her a good mix of a bombshell as well as someone who has that eloquence. I feel like a neckline that I see a lot on soft dramatics that work so beautifully is this heart-shaped neckline. I feel like that also works on romantics, but with soft dramatics sharing a lot of traits with the romantics, there is going to be some overlap. So I do feel like drapey, flowy fabrics that are often recommended for romantics really work well on soft dramatics, such as Ava Gardner. It also naturally just has that siren, old Hollywood feel. I feel like the way a soft dramatic would wear these romantic silhouettes, though, it's going to be a lot more elongated. It's going to be these mermaid dresses or old Hollywood dresses. I feel like this can also be done in a more casual way. You can find a lot of satiny slips that are past the knee, and it still has this air of allure and sensuality. I feel like too, when it comes to Ava Gardner, even though her Aries is only in her midheaven, I still think she exudes what we consider an Aries energy. It's very alluring and naturally confident. For Taurus representation, we have Barbra Streisand. She has a lot of Taurus in her chart, most notably in her Sun and Mercury. So the Sun being your ego, your overall representation and the air that you give off, Mercury being the sign of communication. So when it comes to Tauruses, there is this good mix of luxury as well as Mother Nature energy, as a lot of people put it. When it comes to Barbra Streisand, you can definitely see that. A lot of the things that we see her wear are often shown from a filmography point of view, but she does tend to exhibit this air of luxe, and she almost feels like this very colorful garden of very expensive flowers because of all the embellishments that she chooses to wear, the fabrication, and the way she wears this with such confidence. There's also a bit of humor and fun to some of the pieces that she chooses to wear, and you can also see that in her movies and her musical performances. And her Taurus energy is so evident in not just her personality, but in what she wears as well. As a soft dramatic, I think she does a good mix of someone who wears what is in the soft dramatic lines. Just like Ava Gardner, as I mentioned, she does wear elongating fabrications that accommodate for her height, but also she has a bit of fun with some of these embellishments and color. Representing Geminis, we have Christina Hendricks. She is often used as a style muse whenever I am asked about soft dramatics on my TikTok. Also, as a Gemini representation, I couldn't think of a more perfect one because she is a double Gemini. She is a Gemini rising as well as Venus. I have mentioned before in the past that when you're trying to find your ideal aesthetic, mix your rising sign energy with your Venus sign. As what this whole series is supposed to represent, it doesn't always have to be that, but Christina Hendricks is a good example of that. When it comes to Gemini energy, there is this quick-witted humor and cleverness that Geminis just naturally have. They are also the sign of adaptability. I feel like they do really well in the limelight or just in fame in general. And I think that's really funny that that's what Geminis are notable for. Christina Hendricks is most known for her role as Joan in Mad Men, and oftentimes people forget that she doesn't dress like the 1950s and 60s in real life. But she exhibited that role so perfectly. I do argue, though, that some of those retro elements do appear in her garments, but in ways that some of us don't even realize. So the wrap dress neckline, some of the colors that she exhibits in her everyday wardrobe is some elements that could be akin to the 1950s and 60s. She pulls off these jewel tones beautifully, and I often hear that soft dramatics shouldn't wear stiff fabrics and that they should stick to drapier fabrics. I think Christina Hendricks is a good example of that is not a rule that you always have to go with. A lot of the dresses that she wears in Mad Men, those fabrics that they used, the dresses that they actually sourced were some true vintage. And those are really stiff fabrics. They're not as soft as the modern fabrications that we know today. And she pulls them off with such ease. They accommodate to her curve, furthering proving that you can wear these retro styles with ease. I feel like when it comes to soft dramatics, when they wear an open neckline, such as the V-necks, sweethearts, open necklines, boat necks, it always has this natural feel of elegance. I feel like Christina Hendricks is the perfect style muse if you have a lot of Gemini in your chart, or if you're just a soft dramatic in general that wants to pull off colorful garments and very fun and elegant silhouettes. For Cancer representation, we have Lana Del Rey. So although Lana Del Rey, I often use her as my representation for Scorpio rising, because she has that natural femme fatale feeling. I still think she is still a good representation for Scorpio rising. But if you're familiar with Lana Del Rey looks, she has gone through so many different eras and periods of different styles. We know Lana for softer image, where it's like a mix of cottagecore, where she has like the flowers in her hair, but then she also has that 1960s phase, blue velvet, and then also the super femme fatale, dark, divine, feminine energy. When it comes to Cancer, though, I feel like because that is her Sun and Mercury and Mars, she has a lot of Cancer placements in her, and they play really well into that Scorpio rising, so she does have that dark oceanic feel. But at the core root of her personality, I think there is that softness, that akin to femininity, which I feel like when it comes to Cancers, you tend to be very well in tuned with that divine feminine energy. and it is so evident in her clothing as well. And I think that's actually really cool that she is able to bounce back between these different feminine energies, because feminine energy comes in all sorts of forms, and she exhibits that in her style very well. As a soft dramatic, I think, like Christina Hendricks, she can pull off that 1960s look. Her Cancer way shows a bit more of that softer side and a bit more of a dreamy look. It's kind of like her music videos, where it feels like there is a filter through everything that she chooses, and she takes creative liberty in her art, in her music, as well as how she dresses, and that all melds well together. For Leo representation, we have Monica Bellucci. She is a Leo moon, Venus, and Mars. I feel like that is a lot of Leo in some pretty important placements. I feel like when it comes to Leo, because it's not in her rising, it's not as evident in terms of that Leo ascendant energy, where I have mentioned kind of like Marilyn Monroe, where it just like radiates. But I feel like Leo energy can come in all shapes and forms, and no matter what, when it comes to fire signs in general, there is that natural confidence and assuredness when it's in your placement. And because it is in her moon, where it's like true to who you are, I feel like that confidence is very evident in her wardrobe as well. I know her best for her movie Milena. It's been a while since I've seen it, but that scene where she has her red hair and she is walking down the street, it is extremely iconic. It has been used in GIFs and memes all over since Tumblr days. Even in her other roles and some of the other pieces that she wears outside of movies, there is this sensuality, but also elegance. I feel like when it comes to Leos, a lot of people associate them with sensuality, like you would with an Aries or even Scorpio. But I feel like when it comes to Leo energy, there's a bit of that suit tailored look that can also be akin to Leo energy as well. There's something about soft dramatics and leopard print that just go beautifully together. I also think, I forgot to mention this with Christina Hendricks, but also loud floral designs on these elongated silhouettes just work so naturally on soft dramatics. I feel like when it comes to her outfit choices, they're very elegant, they're very understated. And when it comes to Leo energy, a lot of Leos do like to have fun when it comes to their fashion, but like I mentioned, that may be more of a rising sign energy. I feel like when Leo is in other parts of your chart, you can still radiate that confidence that a Leo has, but in different ways. I think it's the way she wears a slip dress and a button-up draped over it, or the way she wears these coats and has that bit of waist emphasis. And she does it, the way she walks and wears these silhouettes is done so confidently and effortlessly. For Virgo representation, we have the absolute seductive Mae West. So she is one of earliest Hollywood's curvy icons. I love her so much. She's also known for this very seductive voice that she has, and her quick-witted humor comes into nicely with her being a Virgo representation. She has Virgo in her Venus and Mars, which are very prominent placements. When it comes to Virgos, they are often known as a very academic and studious sign. I think it also is akin to their quick-witted humor and cleverness. I feel like the time period that she is in, her fashion and style is very luxurious. I feel like there is a lot of thought into her branding as Mae West. So when it comes to her style, it is not just a means of being an old Hollywood glamour, but I think it is also a statement in which she chooses. She is often casted as these smart, very seductive women in the movies that she plays in. She is also not just a very good Virgo representation, but a soft dramatic representation as well. I think when it comes to soft dramatics, they are often suggested not to wear too much minimal design, and sometimes that scares people. And I feel like Mae West is someone who was never afraid to go that extra mile when it comes to these ruffly details and tassels, and she kind of made it her thing. And she was very smart about it as well. She became iconic for a reason. Our next soft dramatic muse is Jennifer Hudson, representing Libras. I feel like when it comes to Libra energy, there's something very effortless and goddess-like when it comes to Libras in general. It's very easy and minimal, which is funny because that is often what is not recommended for soft dramatics. I feel like if those extra details scare you as a soft dramatic, I feel like Jennifer Hudson actually shows examples of ways to balance that. She does wear silhouettes that have minimal details, but it still accommodates to a dramatic vertical that she has. I feel like that dramatic or extra detail that is often recommended for soft dramatics doesn't have to always be in the embellishments that Barbra Streisand pulls off or even Mae West, but can also be shown in certain details, whether it is an asymmetrical detail or playing with different fabrications and color. I also love Jennifer Hudson as a good example of someone who wears these more angular suits and blazers, as well as some drapier fabrics as well. For Scorpio representation, we have Ashley Graham. As I mentioned, I always use Lana Del Rey as a Scorpio energy representation, but Ashley Graham has a lot more Scorpio in her. So although it is not her rising, it is very prevalent in her chart, and I think it's evident in her style as well. I've mentioned before that Scorpio energy is very femme fatale, and Ashley Graham, I know her so well in her, not just her lingerie shoots, but in some of her everyday wear. She wears certain cuts and silhouettes that is bold, and she is unafraid to mix around sheer fabrics as well as satiny ones, and she pulls it off in a very femme fatale way. As I mentioned, I'm sorry, that's my favorite term, and it is one of my highest compliments. What I like too is that Ashley Graham plays around a lot with silhouettes. I think that different necklines really do work on soft dramatics. As I have repeated, I love the sweetheart neckline on soft dramatics, but I think the asymmetrical, especially when it drapes and it has a bit of fold in the fabric, it accommodates to the goddess-like features that soft dramatics are often compared to. Ashley Graham is a really good example of someone, if you were just like walking around the city getting coffee, she has really good casual looks that I recommend as a style muse. Adele, who is our Sagittarius representation for soft dramatic, I love when she wears these dramatic plunging necklines. I think when it comes to being a dramatic in general, details and silhouettes that are deemed as too much, I feel like any dramatic, whether you're a pure dramatic or soft dramatic, can pull it off with such ease and it doesn't look too much or too extra. There's something about Sagittarius energy. I know I always say they remind me of grunge and rebellious nature, which Adele, I definitely think she has, with it being her moon sign, and something adventurous, but a very art deco look to her. And the reason why I say that, I think there is a lot of geometric shapes in some of the patterns that she wears, and she really pulls it off. I think when it comes to this geometric look that is very inspired by the 1920s or art deco in general, it really accommodates for that mix of dramatic lines as well as the curve. So I feel like if you are looking for pattern inspiration that doesn't feel too much but is still elegant, I think 1920s or Art Deco inspired pieces can work, whether it is something you just drape over or something that is a subtle pattern. I think Adele does a really good job at that. She is a very elegant style muse. I think her Sagittarius comes out more so when you can tell she's having a little more fun in some of these satiny fabrications or some of the color that she wears and the plunging necklines that I mentioned. Okay, so for Capricorn representation, we have Marlene Dietrich. She holds a very special place in my heart. As a former fashion student, I actually focused on lingerie design and I did a project on Marlene. And one of my favorite fun facts that I learned when I was reading about her was that she had the largest collection of bras. And what I loved about her too was that she wore a lot of menswear. She wore a lot of these tailored suits, and she just always dressed very smart. I feel like she always had this empowering energy about her, and I think that's very Capricorn of her. When I found out that she had such prominent Capricorn energy in her chart, it is just the most evident in her. She has that mix of that early like CEO energy that I have mentioned, and not just because she's wearing suits and tailored pieces, but it's the way she wears them and the stature. Also, being a soft dramatic, wearing these silhouettes, it always has this very grandiose feeling. And that's something that I don't think a lot of people akin to Capricorn energy. There is this very empowering feeling about that type of energy. I think she is a good representation for soft dramatics, even though she wears a lot of sharp lines. I still think it really works on her Kibbe body type. Bottom line is Marlene Dietrich is a good muse, whether you are a soft dramatic or you have prominent Capricorn energy. For Aquarius, representing soft dramatics, we have Gemma Arterton. It is often said that Aquariuses are one of the most influential signs in very subtle ways. They tend to have a very offbeat nature about their style in the way they choose to dress. There is just always some form of a fun element to what they choose to wear. Gemma Arterton is one of my main style muses, and I don't take that lightly. I remember seeing her in this In Style photo shoot, and I was extremely entranced by this. And I won't shy away from saying this, but that photo shoot is the reason why I became so entranced by lingerie design and how to wear lingerie design as outerwear and not just as this. So that's what I mean by Aquarius energy having a subtle way of being extremely influential. I think when it comes to Gemma Arterton's style, she accommodates for her curve in a very inspiring way. I feel like she does it well, whether it is in her more casual looks or her more goddess-like red carpet looks. There's also something very philosophical about Aquarius energy. I think I've mentioned this before, but they give me art school grunge feel. And she does a good mix of these very sensual goddess-like styles. I say goddess-like because when there is a lot of drape and elongation to a silhouette, that's what I mean by goddess-like. But she mixes those elements with very smart and clever details, whether it is the argyle in a pattern, the way she pairs things together. I know it is often said that soft dramatics look best when they wear elongated silhouettes and pieces that go past the knee, but I think she also shows examples of how you can wear shorter silhouettes as well. I forgot to mention this for some of the past muses that we were just talking about, but when it comes to soft dramatics, there is something about them pulling off these wispy hair pieces that are a lot of people consider a Brigitte Bardot look. So if you are a soft dramatic and you are going for a very femme-presenting look, maybe consider this effortless hairstyle, whether it is wispy bangs or this messy, effortless updo. And lastly, for Pisces, we have Rachel Weisz. Her name and her presence has always been very prevalent to me. I know her best from the Mummy series, and I think her fashion in those movies alone have been very iconic. I feel like when it comes to Pisces, just like Scorpio energy, there is a bit of that dark femme fatale feel, but whereas a Scorpio femme fatale feel is very a little more loud and a little more like outwardly alluring, when it comes to a Pisces energy, it's a lot softer and a lot more subtle. And that's why whenever we see these inspiration boards when it comes to Pisces energy, it is more siren-like and it is much more quietly alluring. And I feel like she exhibits that perfectly, whether it is in the movies that she tends to play or what she decides to wear. I know she is not often seen as an example for a darker aesthetic, but I feel like a lot of the pieces that she wore like in the early 2000s and the 90s is actually a good alternative look. I think it could be the eyebrows, the retro look, the way she wears some of these darker slips with lace embellishments. It also has that Pisces energy as well. As a soft dramatic, I feel like a lot of the pieces that she wears accommodates for her curve, and she does it very elegantly. And I think she is a great example as a soft dramatic. She is often used as an example for a soft dramatic, but even though we see her often, I actually think she is still a good example for someone with curve as well as someone with prominent Pisces energy. I feel like when it comes to soft dramatics, there was so much that I didn't cover. Even though I am doing this series of astrology representation in Kibbe, even if I have covered your Kibbe body type before, it doesn't mean I won't bring it up again. I feel like there is still so much to learn about Kibbe as well as astrology. So just because I have done a video on your Kibbe or your astrological sign doesn't mean it won't be brought up again. I hope you enjoy this video, and until next time, I hope you have a good week. Bye.